Sticking in Arizona, Governor Palin has made a huge announcement endorsing Doug Ducey in the gubernatorial race there. Palin said, quote, Doug Ducey is the private sector job creator and proven conservative leader that Arizona needs as its next governor. A self-made man, Doug came to Arizona for college, working at the local beer distributor to pay his way through. After graduation, Doug applied his skills and work ethic to the business world. Through his efforts as CEO, Doug grew Cold Stone Creamery from a small local Tempe ice cream parlor with 4 stores into a major international chain with 1,400 franchises in 31 countries. Still headquartered in Arizona, this international business provides jobs and revenue for the state. Since being elected state treasurer, Doug has fought to close financial loopholes, fix the state's books, and stop a $1 billion annual tax increase, unquote. To read the complete Ducey endorsement and to see any of the governor's posts in their entirety, visit Sarah Palin's Facebook page, follow her on Twitter at Sarah Palin USA, and visit sarahpalinchannel.com.
It's time for Commonwealth Common Sense with Susan Stimson and Kevin Scholla.
Hey, Susan, welcome back. How are you?
Thanks, Kevin. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Well, this culture that we talk about, everybody talks about the culture war, and we see it really much in politics, but just the way people go about themselves, it's just really been taken to an extreme. And, this segment, of course, Commonwealth Common Sense, you have a great example of really the worst of the worst in Virginia right now.
Unfortunately, we have had a rough couple of weeks here with our former governor, Bob McDonald, who was a very popular Republican, who has been on trial over the last 2 weeks regarding possible corruption. And the question is, he took money and loans that were not properly disclosed, and the businessman who did so received unprecedented access to the governor and his wife. Unfortunately, what's on trial now, though, is a shattering of the former First Lady's reputation in order to preserve the former governor's professional reputation, as if he didn't know anything of all of this that was going on. I don't really think that this is playing well with the public, and as we watch this very sad case unfold, the question that is in my mind, and I think a lot of other people's mind, and this is happening across the nation as you're seeing in poll numbers, just the lowest percentage ever of Americans that have a trust in their government. How does this happen? How did someone like Bob McDonald reach the point where he was willing to walk so closely to the line like this? And I think it comes back to, what is the culture in government? What is being supported by the elected leaders? What is it that they're staying quiet about? And what is it that they're not willing to speak up? And what is it that they are doing that is, not being transparent? And I think that that's a lot of what we're seeing right now, is just a culture that supports and encourages this type of behavior. And at the very least, it does not discourage this type of behavior. And so I think that, a lot of people are just left really just shaking their heads, and, they're not even surprised by it anymore.
And doesn't the McDonald one smart a little more because of the fact of how he started? I mean, this was supposed to be a Tea Party guy. This was a guy that people talked about as a possible presidential candidate down the road. And then for him to sell out, I mean, it's not – you thought you had a good person there. And it's funny, you had the Eric Cantor deal in Virginia too. So 2 examples in Virginia of guys who, were on the inside of that supposed common sense movement, and they're right there with the rest of them.
Over and over, we see people who run for office and they talk like activists. They talk the talk. And he ran on a conservative platform and he won overwhelmingly. And what does he do when he gets into office? But immediately he just sells out on the principles on which he ran. And that would be keeping taxes low. And on top of that, he and the other Republican leadership, including the Speaker of the House, worked together on a backroom deal that it all came to light over the last 6 weeks here, that actually there was language in the budget that was intentional, and that it was intentionally written in such a way that Governor McAuliffe could conceivably interpret the broad terms of the language to allow him to expand Medicaid. So you just have lines that are being crossed or that are blurred, and it's a culture that our leaders are the ones that they set the tone, and they are the ones that can demand better of themselves and better of their peers in office. But the silence has been deafening on this. From my perspective as a woman, watching what's being done to Maureen McDonald's reputation, do I think that she's innocent? I absolutely do not. I'm appalled by some of the things that she did as the First Lady, but I do not think that this is playing well with women. No one wants to see this. I mean, literally, Bob is throwing her reputation. He's throwing her overboard in order to save his own skin. And I do not think that at all helps build the narrative on Republicans. In fact, I think it further feeds the distrust that we see in the polls that women have toward Republicans.
You said perhaps rhetorically a little bit ago, where do these people come from? But I think there is a real point to be made there. You know, I mean, kids are supposed to want to be baseball players and firefighters and policemen, but we see so many of these people. I mean, it's just this weirdness of they've wanted this power grab from such an early age, and it's pushed on them perhaps, when you see some of these families, the Kennedys, the Gores, different folks who just keep this going and going and going. And I think that that's really part of it. George Washington didn't want any part of that presidency, the reluctant leader, right? He was one of the best ones. Sarah Palin, who we talk about now, who has not committed to any sort of a future run. It's the people who understand, hey, I'm serving the people, they're not serving me, and that has been, like you said, blurred. Has just been completely blasted. Even George III, as the tyrannical king in Great Britain, he expressed that if George Washington could walk away from all that power, then he really was an amazing man. And he did do that, and he did set the example because he understood the natural temptations that every single human being has. We all have the temptation when you're in a position of power like that. There have to be checks and balances, and I hold our leaders responsible for this. Bob McDonald's peers, the other leaders alongside him. There is obviously a culture, and it's not just in Virginia, but it's at the federal level as well. Look, we have some really good people who are in office, but we also have some people that may have started off with the right intentions, but they just get sucked in by this system and by the culture that exists right now. So the leaders who are now in an elected position, they need to wise up, and they need to realize that it may be a little uncomfortable to speak up and to show some spine in giving an accountability. But at the end of the day, that is the best thing that makes the strongest government, because it restores the trust that the people have in their elected leaders. Well, there is a little bit of good news. Your Governor McAuliffe has come out for the Redskin name, so that is something to hang your hat on in Virginia of late. Oh, who knows that issue? I mean, I think it's funny watching the different tweets on it and the different Facebook posts, and eventually, in my opinion, I think at the end of the day, political correctness is going to win. But maybe I'll be wrong. Yeah, that would be something. And he's also, it's funny how you see a lot of the Democrats with that issue, too. They try to play it both ways, too. The ones who aren't in Washington, they're appalled, but the ones there are like, are my season tickets in trouble? So we know that game, too. Susan, great job. We appreciate it. Thanks. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you, Kevin. Susan Stimson in Virginia. More Commonwealth Common Sense next week. Now, our weekly commentary, Steel Resolve. Here's Sarah Steelman.
Thanks, Kevin. As usual, a recent discussion with my youngest son reminded me of one of the fundamental truths that keeps getting lost on Congress. Michael is trying to decide what he wants to do when he graduates from college. He's considering going to medical school to become a pediatrician. He checked out average starting salaries for pediatricians and announced that $150,000 per year is more than enough to live comfortably. As a good conservative economist and a mother, I gently reminded him not to forget about the federal taxes. Well, how much is that, he asked. It's about a third at that salary, I said. Well, he couldn't believe it. So he says, well, why should I work hard for that when the government takes so much? Why don't I just earn enough to keep me in a lower tax bracket? And then I tell him that doesn't even include state and local taxes either, which further depresses him. That's not fair, he says. When both Republicans and Democrats say the middle class is getting squeezed, they are both correct. The middle class is evaporating because government is taking a bigger and bigger share of what middle class families earn. My son is right. It isn't fair. Incentives work, and so do disincentives. So let's reduce the tax bracket and let families keep it. That's fair, and it's also called freedom. This is Sarah Steelman for Mama Grizzly Radio.
Tune in again next week for another segment of Steel Resolve right here on the Palin Update. The Palin Update, including Commonwealth Common Sense and Steel Resolve, is on demand and available for download. So just head to mamagrizzlyradio.com, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. Visit mamagrizzlyradio.com for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, like Mama Grizzly Radio on Facebook and follow along on Twitter at Mama Grizz Radio, at Kevin Scholla, at Susan B. Stimson, and at Sarah_Steelman. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I want to thank Sarah Steelman, Susan Stimson, and everyone here at Mama Grizzly Radio. Thanks to Gabriela, Saucedo Mercer, and thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.